It is often said that islands are metaphors of the heart, embodying peace, solitude, and tranquility. Yet the picturesque island nation of Madagascar tells a far different tale. A tale not merely of tranquil coastlines and endemic wildlife, but of bravery, resistance, and a yearning for liberty. The Madagascar Uprising of 1947-48 was a tumultuous period in the country's history, echoing the indomitable spirit of its inhabitants and defining its journey from subjugation to sovereignty. Lying in the Indian Ocean off the southeastern coast of Africa, Madagascar, also known as the Red Island, is a world within a world, known for its endemic wildlife and the cultural amalgamation of African, Asian, and European influences. But the island's vibrant cultural mosaic was marred by years of colonial rule, the most significant and impactful being the French domination that began in 1896. While colonial influences pervaded every aspect of life on the island, it was the upheaval of 1947-48 that emerged as a critical period in Madagascar's colonial history. The uprising against French colonial rule was the island's fiery testament to resistance and a desire for freedom. The Malagasy people always fought against their subjugation. The Europeans wanted to control the island because of its resources and strategic value, like the sea passage to India, though they made several unsuccessful attempts to claim and colonize the island in the 18th and 19th century. Thanks to Rana Valona I, European presence on the island was minimized because she fought them back with all the island's force. The Europeans, especially the French, didn't appreciate that the queen was not subjugating the island, which is also why they called her the Mad Monarch of Madagascar. The queen's son, Prince Radama II, was not a fan of his mother's policy and apparently was also quite young and naive. He was supposedly tricked into signing the so-called Lambert Charter. This charter was written in French, a language Radama was not able to speak, and it stated that the French businessman Joseph-François Lambert, a guest at his court who arrived in Madagascar only 3 weeks before, would be allowed to exclusive right to develop all minerals, forests, and unoccupied land in Madagascar. Until this point, land in Madagascar, which was viewed by the populace as the sacred ground of the ancestors, could only be possessed temporarily, especially by foreigners. It was exactly this signature that the young prince was tricked into giving that would cost Madagascar its freedom. Because 27 years later, long after the assassination of Radama, the Marina monarchy still refused to fulfill the terms of the contract. This was the invitation France was waiting for, to have a reason for a military invasion and to finally turn Madagascar into a French colony in 1895. But the Malagasy people were not defeated. The next uprising followed 2 years later. It was unsuccessful and over 100,000 Malagasy died. But they didn't stop. In 1994, another uprising took place, again unsuccessful, but proving that the people were not to be silent. So you see, the flame was always there. It was sometimes fully lit, then the French tried to put it out, but it was always there. The French treated the Malagasy population very poorly. Even though there was officially no more slavery, they made the people work de facto like slaves. This was called corvée, forced labor in lieu of taxes. In addition, the French involuntarily conscripted young Malagasy into the army to fight in the First and then also in the Second World War. The next spark of rebellion was not far. It was indeed ignited during the Second World War. Many Malagasy soldiers fought in this war that wasn't theirs. They fought in France, Morocco, and Syria. They did it for the hope of independence after the war. So when the British ousted the Vichy government from Madagascar in 1942, and gave it to the Free French forces, the hope for change among the island's inhabitants got fueled. Like many other colonies, Madagascar also hoped for freedom after the Second World War, when the surviving soldiers came back with their stories about the sovereignty of countries and freedom of people. In 1945, several key Malagasy nationalist leaders attempted to achieve independence for Madagascar through legal means. Ravoahangi, Razeta, and Rabemananjara of the Mouvement démocratique de la rénovation malgache (MDRM) formed the trio that became very prominent at that time and had support throughout the world. Everything they wanted was independence from France. They even preferred a pacifistic approach and still wanted to stay in the Francophone community. I believe those were really reasonable demands, presented in a legal and peaceful manner. However, the reaction was anything but reasonable. Just a month earlier, another colony of France started to fight for their right of independence. The Vietnamese nationalists in French Indochina. Now, another valuable colony comes along with this independence talk. No way, José. The MDRM quest for independence was received as a blow to French prestige and authority, so they denied it. But not just that. France's Prime Minister Paul Ramadier and the Minister of the Colonies Marius Moutet declared war against the peaceful Malagasy independence movement. This withholding of liberty, coupled with economic and social exploitation, now triggered increasing frustration among the people. On the night of March the 29th, 1947, the volcano of discontent finally erupted. Armed groups like the nationalist secret society Panama and Guinea launched a coordinated attack against the French military and administrative locations. Many of the insurgents were demobilized soldiers of the tirailleurs malgache, returning from World War II and frustrated with the limited recognition and opportunity afforded them by the French colonial government. Numerous others were railway workers who hid themselves in the dense eastern rainforest and made use of guerrilla tactics. With encirclement, ambush, and human wave tactics, they were able to defeat their better armed opponents on several occasions. At the height of the movement, nationalist insurgents gained control of 1/3 of the island. Anecdotes from this fateful fight recount tales of brave men and women who, armed with little more than spears, machetes, and antiquated firearms, stood against the well-equipped French forces. The rebellion, however, was met with a brutal response. The French suppression of the uprising was marked by extreme violence, following the oil spot method to root out, demoralize, and crush the guerrilla fighters. In addition, the security forces adopted a strategy of terror and psychological warfare, involving torture, collective punishment, the burning of villages, mass arrests, executions, and war rape. The intensity and cruelty of the French response was then unprecedented in the colonial history of France. On May 6, 1947, in Muramanga, soldiers machine-gunned MDRM officials detained in wagons, killing between 124 and 160 mostly unarmed MDRM activists. In Mananjari, hundreds of Malagasy were killed, among them women and children, and a group of prisoners thrown alive out of an airplane. The rebels had expected that the United States might intervene in their favor, but not such action was taken by Washington. Despite the endurance of the Malagasy people, the rebellion was brutally quelled. In the month following the rebellion, the French forces launched a pacification campaign, which was essentially a wave of ruthless repression. Estimates suggest that nearly 100,000 Malagasy people lost their lives during this period. In the aftermath, several Malagasy nationalist leaders were arrested, and prominent figures like the trio Ravoahangi Raseta and Rabe Mananjara were tried and sentenced to life in prison in the infamous trial of 1948. The reverberations of the uprising were far-reaching. The Malagasy populace, though traumatized, remained resilient. The resistance against French colonial rule continued, gradually intensifying and organizing over the years. The atrocities committed during the 1947-48 acted as a catalyst for fostering the national sentiment that ultimately led to Madagascar's independence in 1960. Today, more than 75 years after the uprising, Madagascar commemorates March the 29th as Matthews Day, a national holiday to honor those who sacrificed their lives for the dream of a free Madagascar. However, the path to progress had been challenging for the island nation. Decades of political instability and economic issues have impeded its socio-economic development. It is safe to say that this struggle was partially caused by the national trauma that remained after the violent repression of the uprising. Efforts to build a nation that reflects the aspirations of its people continue, but the struggle is very much still alive. France took its time to recognize the crimes committed. 57 years after the uprising, Jacques Chirac said that the way the French forces acted was unacceptable. However, the request to declassify the archival materials of the French government related to the uprising was till today never approved. The uprising has significantly contributed to the formation of Madagascar's national identity. The memories of those tumultuous times serve as a constant reminder of the courage and resilience that define the island and its people. The 1947-48 uprising was not merely a revolt, it was a manifestation of the Malagasy spirit's resistance against oppression. It was a testament to their quest for justice and equality, and although the tale is steeped in violence and loss, it continues to inspire and shape Madagascar's destiny today, forging an unbroken bond between the past and the future of this incredible island nation. Thank you for watching. If you want to know more about forgotten history, especially African history, please click here.